Hello and welcome to my show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Bold and Going Solo Network. The information and opinions expressed on this show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual personal experience. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. So you know the pain, the stress, the struggle that divorcing men and women go through? Well, there is a way to find peace, sanity, all while assisting your attorney through their legal process. This can save you thousands of dollars. My name is Tina Huggins. I'm your divorce coach specialist, divorce planning specialist, restorative family mediator, and conflictual co-parenting coach. And I am excited about today because my guest speaker is a retired lawyer with 25 years of experience, Kim Korven. Kim is a mediator, a divorce educator, and creator of the My Lawyer Free Divorce Coach. With a background in law, mediation, family dynamics, and farming, she empowers families to navigate divorce with dignity and love without relying on lawyers. Her pragmatic, caring voice guides clients to remember the fact that they're the CEO of their own families, creating fair outcomes and lasting peace. So I'm excited for our talk today, Kim. So thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me, Tina. It's a real joy to be here.
So as I was prepping for this today and getting everything down in the notes, I kind of reread everything. And so I find that it's interesting that you feel that they should be able to divorce without relying on their attorney or a attorney. So tell me why you feel that's an important one coming in from being a lawyer for so
Well,
long.
exactly. It's not what one would expect from somebody with a legal background, right? Now, when divorce was tossed into the courts um, in the 1850s, when you think of the population then, most people did not know how to read, right? There was no Wi-Fi. Women were still property. And there was much more deference given to experts. The reality about divorce is it didn't start out as a legal issue, because government doesn't care about things you and I do in our homes that aren't causing trouble. They only get involved when something's happening and it's creating issues for society. So marriages were ending before government was involved, before there were any legal rules, before it went to court. And we're a much more educated population. And really, when you approach divorce as a life transition, because that's really what it is, you can solve a lot of the things yourselves. Now, what people often don't realize, like when you get married, when you got married, Tina, did you go and get your marriage license right away, or what did you do first?
So the first time when I got married, because that was military, we had to do some military stuff. So it was actually done at the courthouse. Now, my second time, we had we had a ceremony, and several years later, we actually did the legal end of that. And we went and did that at the courthouse, just signed the paperwork and gave it to him.
Yeah, so I mean, most people they get engaged and they start planning the event and they do the legality like most people do the legality. You get your marriage license like within the month before the service. And your example, right? You had the service, you had the fun ceremony, right?
Mm-hmm.
The gathering, and then years later you took care of the legalities. And if you've ever thought of experienced a death in the family, the first thing that happens, people do not apply for letters probate as soon as somebody dies. Often there's a wake or a service, there's an honoring of the human being. And then the legalities are dealt with. It's a much more humane, empowering way to do it. And I'm just saying, use the same approach with divorce. You can. There's information out there beyond the My Lawyer Free Divorce course, right? So,
Yeah. We, I don't know. I know when I'm working with my clients, I advise them right off the bat not to bring on a lawyer in the very beginning part, because especially where my clients being in high conflict aspects anyways, the sooner you bring on a lawyer, which they're probably going to need, and they're going to need a litigative lawyer, that litigative lawyer can cause their own conflict unnecessarily. But if they're really good at their job, they jump when you have problems, and it just costs lots of money and it causes so much conflict. So I always want my clients to wait. So when you and I met and I got to hear about your lawyer-free divorce course, I was like, wow, there's a concept that people don't think about at all, because what's the first thing they do when they think of divorce? Rock right into any divorce lawyer's office. And oftentimes it's a wrong lawyer for their specific situation.
well, and it's their family and friends who are telling them, you need to protect your legal rights. And I agree with you. I have a similar approach with my mediation clients. And what's interesting, like Amanda Ripley wrote a book called High Conflict, and she says there's got to be 4 factors present for any kind of dispute to go high conflict. And 3 of them apply to divorce, right? And one is you have a community of people saying, right, who are supporting the conflict, supporting you in it. So that's family and friends going, hire a lawyer. That's the only way to do it. Hire a good litigator. The other one is there's a conflictpreneur, which is someone who's making money off the conflict.
Mhm.
Now, a lawyer would say, no, 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 that's not my primary purpose. And it's not. But the lawyer's primary purpose is being a zealous advocate, protecting their client's legal rights. So, by the nature of the lawyer's duty to the client, they are a conflictpreneur, right? It isn't about what the client wants, it's about your legal rights. And then, if one person in the conflict ends up feeling humiliated, so the person who's served with a divorce petition often feels humiliation. And then, we have the real high conflict. So, yeah, it's easier if the lawyers stay out of it at the start.
Yeah. I I think one, they shouldn't be there in the beginning. I try to help my clients, get organized for the attorney before we go to the attorney. And by then I usually know what type of lawyer they're gonna need, because my clients more than likely are gonna need a litigative lawyer. And I like when I said earlier about a good litigative lawyer jumps on things, I have one that I work with in Colorado, and I am also working with the client. And so we her and I, she's like, oh my gosh, if I say anything to him, he's right on top of it. And so, and it costs her, several $100s for him to follow through with that. So her and I take care of all of the
Mhm.
sidelines. She's now doing the communication with the ex and with the ex's attorney, just making sure that her attorney knows this is what's taking place, and keeping everything above water that way. And then when it's time, he already has all the documentation and he's ready to jump. But now he's not jumping on one thing, he's jumping on a series of a few things, so that it's not penny nickel and diming the client to death.
Well, I know, like I've worked. Well, my favorite lawyer to send people to, she retired. But something else I encourage my clients to do if they're working with lawyers is, have a folder where, they gather things like emails and text messages and save them in one folder. So instead of sending each one separately to the lawyer
Exactly.
and being billed 0.10 of an hour, which could be $50, you send 6 and maybe get billed $50 instead of 300. And you know, something I've noticed in my practice is that there are times when I've worked with real high conflict families when they've been able to settle. And part of that is because they don't have lawyers involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other part is that whole element of humiliation and playing the no, you know, like I believe that hurt people, and we're all just doing the best we can.
Yeah. And that's where, I try to explain this to some people. The person that asks for the divorce has already gone through a series of of starting the healing process already, because they've already thought about it. They've gone through the fears and the hurt and the anger. Whether they expressed any of that to their partner or not, they've been lulling that over and over in their head for maybe months or even years. Like in my case, it was years. And and so by the time we hand that summons for divorce over to our partner, they're just starting that. So now they're clear down here where we're clear up here on our dealing and grieving process. And they're just starting that. And once they start that, then we've got all of this stuff. And so I recommend that you don't even tell your mate in the very beginning process of getting things started. Gather all your documentation, work with the coach if that's who you're working with, or work with somebody like yourself that they have the checklist of everything they're going to need. And then they're ready to file for the divorce. And then they have an exit plan in place, whether that means that they're going to exit the home or their partner's going to exit the home, or whether they know whether they can even live in the same home until this is done. I have lots of attorneys that don't recommend that you leave the home, but in my case with my clients are being abused.
Well, and like I, you know, and yeah, I'm a retired lawyer. And I remember about 25 years ago talking to a police officer about a situation. And she said to me, Kim, you can always replace the house. You can't replace the person. And it was this light bulb moment that, like, the legal entitlement to the home doesn't disappear because you leave it. It continues to exist. And like over half of the women who are murdered, it happens in their homes. So I'm like you. It's like if your instincts are saying this is a dangerous place for you, like even if your head's saying, no, 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 I'm okay, it's all going to be okay. But if you've got the sensations in your body, you can't be replaced. Leave, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's very important because I work with post-separation abuse as well. And the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is the moment you go to leave. And that's whether you are physically leaving, saying you're going to leave, or you wrote it down and your partner finds that. And that happened to me. I ended up with a broken hand that that day. I had written it down because I was working with a therapist, and I don't know where I had left my notebook or whether he got my notebook out of my bag, but I had written down that I was planning on this exit or whatever it was. And that night I ended up with a broken hand and separated ribs.
And I mean, I've seen, like, I haven't experienced the physical violence myself, but of course, with in my professional life, oh yes. And it isn't in the woman's head. And it's interesting. Like one of the ways that I help people is I have this little workbook. How do I tell my husband I want a divorce and keep the peace? And it's based on, like, I had a husband with a bad temper, And I knew, he loves the kids. I love the kids. Kids are always going to love both of us. And he didn't find out we were separating by being served, right? Because that would have just escalated everything. And his family, there was money to fight. What I did was I actually, in that limbo stage of should I stay, should I go, I'd ask myself a series of questions, right? And one of them was, well, when did I first know that this wasn't going to work? And it happened to be when he proposed because we were in Banff and he proposes and I'm living 100% in my head then. And my body immediately screams, say no, right? Like everything in me screamed at me, say no. And I'm sitting there thinking, if I say no, he's going to cry. I don't know how to deal with it. If he's going to cry, that's just, oh, yuck. Oh, I can't cope with that. And then I thought of the 8-hour drive home and I thought, oh, that's going to be so awkward. So all of this in a split second. And then I'm like, well, how bad could it be? Right? So I didn't listen to my instincts and I said yes. And another one of the questions is about what are your 3 best memories? And that one I use with my mediation clients. And of course, what often happens, and they share them, is often the best memories are from the life before children. Because after the children come, you just kind of you've got no energy for this spouse, right? I'm sure you remember it's like, no, all my attention was on the kids and my career. And same for, you know, my spouse, my husband. And it's really interesting when you have a discussion with that in mind, it's hard to blame the other person and it shifts the dynamic, right? Because when all the good memories, and then it's been like 15 years, there's been all the good memories have involved the entire family. It helps people process. It helps that other person catch up. And of course, when you're not feeling humiliated and it lessens the fear and makes it easier for people to make better decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I kind of want our viewers to know too, because there's a couple of things that you said here that fit for my late husband. Not all people, especially abused people, are women. Men get abused by their spouse, their wives as well, if they're in a marriage that it's a man and a woman. And if they're both men, then obviously somebody can be abusive to the other person. And so in my late husband's, life, you were talking about you knew that you didn't want to be in the relationship when he proposed. That was exactly what happened with my late husband is he had started seeing her and fell in love with her son, which he later adopted.
Mhm.
And during that time frame, she got pregnant with his first son. And so he felt obligated. But he said the wedding was disastrous, was horrible. He hated it. And he wanted to jump off the ship for their honeymoon. He says he could never do anything right. He never could do anything right. From the moment he asked her to get married, everything went downhill from there. So men can experience the same stuff as well.
Yeah. And why I phrase it, I totally agree. Why I phrase it as how to tell my husband I want a divorce is because most divorces, they're initiated by the wife. They're the people doing the doom scrolling at 3 a.m. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it's I mean, every year there's at least 2 men who I end up working with.
Mm-hmm.
Who, as a mediator or as a divorce strategist. that it's a really abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm. And the sad part, some of the statistics out there, they say that women are 1 in every 3 that get abused, but for men, it's 1 in every 4, and less men report that. Now,
Mhm.
we're not necessarily talking about physical abuse, but in most cases, when they're reported, it is physical abuse. My father never reported his, but he was shot at several times. And then when I picked him up out of the hospital the last time, she drove over him. And my late husband, his ex bit him so bad it made his shirt extremely bloody. And so that's how he went in the next day, is he went in to report that. And then he started the process, and got her out of the home, but then he got afraid. And this is kind of what I did, is I ended up afraid, and I ended up back in the home, and that specific day I attempted suicide. So
Mhm.
those are kind of things that happen. We get fearful of their attacks, verbal attacks from a distance, even though there was a restraining order in place. And we just feel like, oh my gosh, if I don't bring them back in, they're going to be horrible when this is all over. And the reality is if you drop those charges, that abuse is going to be worse on the other end of drop charges than it will be on the other end of dealing with the divorce with the restraining order in place.
No, I believe it. It's like there's a whole, I mean, of course, the most dangerous relationships are where there's what's called coercive control is
Mm.
present. And those are, that they started out, this was real Prince Charming or just the woman of your dreams, completely lovely, like completely lovely, just so giving and so wonderful and just understands me completely. And things move in the relationship very, very quickly. Um, the abuser undermines your relationships with your support network, right?
Mhm.
And it's very, very subtle. I mean, it can be very overt too in terms of the control, like you're 5 minutes late and you're accused of having an affair, or you go and buy groceries and your spouse, reimburses you and your spouse yells at you because you bought chips and refuses to reimburse you for those. Um, and it's so you're alone, so you completely doubt yourself. Now, what's interesting is, well, what really makes me sad is I talk to a lot of people who are working with a therapist and they have no idea they're in an abusive relationship,
I was one of those.
right? Like, because like I'll spot it talking to somebody. Um, I was chatting with a fellow this morning and he kept apologizing. Even for a Canadian, it was excessive, right? And he said a few other things, and I'm like, okay. Hmm. Hmm. So it's, you really, really doubt yourself. And I see a lot of, not a lot, but there's a tell with it. And you might have noticed this in mediation too. In coercive control, you'll have one partner who's really articulate and charming, and they make so much sense, right? And they're just reasonable. They're just great to talk to. And then you have the other spouse who can come across as whiny and indecisive, and they might have been diagnosed recently with ADHD or depression, right? And they're just, they're micromanagers to an extreme level. And as a lawyer, when I'd have those clients, I never knew, oh, it's coercive control. But with mediation, I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the person who's the micromanager, they know the facts like that, you know? And the other person who's so charming, they're just skimming the surface. They don't have the details. And
Mm-hmm.
so I talk with people like that, and I'm just, okay, this is abusive.
It's very noticeable when you start talking with people. Like you said, he apologized several times. That's like key number one. And I get my clients to stop saying, I'm sorry. They can apologize, and they shouldn't apologize for their actions, but apologize for how their actions made you feel, so that they are not taking responsibility for that person's actions. But you're right, that's one of the very first things that we see in people that are dealing with coercive control is they apologize a lot.
And it's I say, I now, oh yeah, depression. Oh, I was just diagnosed with ADHD. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah. So you and I have a very similar way of mediating, even though you weren't trained in the restorative side. Your mediation aspects are very similar to the way that I do things. And then we talked earlier about how lawyers come in, and when they come into mediation, it's like, oh my gosh, mediation slows down. It's like you hit this brick wall. And so if my clients decide they need to have attorneys, I do a fishbowl effect. I don't allow the attorneys to talk during the mediation process. I tell them that if you need to talk with your client, we'll take a recess. Then you can talk with them, but there's going to be no stalling or stopping things unless I feel we need to bring the lawyers in with ideas of how we can get over a hurdle.
Well, and mediation, for so long it's been, oh, just treat divorce and mediation like it's a business transaction. And that's the message that lawyers give to their clients too. And
Mhm.
and of course, if you don't deal with the emotions, you're not going to be able to settle anything. Because if you don't trust this person, and it's really giving them the opportunity, as you say, even if attorneys are there, it's the clients need to speak. It's not having your attorney be your advocate. No, that's appropriate for the courtroom. That's where an attorney does the best job. And I've always remembered the first small claims we have. I don't know if you have small claims court, but
Mhm.
yeah, right. So my first trial, and of course, going through law school in the early 1990s, I thought court was the absolute best way to resolve any dispute. You have somebody impartial. Like it was just so beautiful. And none of those icky emotions getting in. So I end up with this small claims trial. And my client, it was all over. He'd built a fence around a rented lot. His daughter and grandkids lived there. The landowner had said beforehand they would pay for the fence. Landowner, after the fence was built, refused to pay. So my client takes them to court. And our first meeting, he mentions his daughter and grandkids, and it's a busy street. So we are successful in court, other than the fact that the court did not order him taxes that he paid on the materials. And I am so excited. Look at this. I'm a good advocate. We won. Justice has prevailed. All of it. And I phone him to discuss our success. He's furious. The judge didn't listen to me. I cannot believe this. This is a travesty. If he'd listened to me, he would have given me back the taxes on this. Like it was less than $100. And he's wanting to appeal. And I'm like, what is going on here? This is not like you should be happy. I'm just thinking, right? And so I thought about this for a lot, a lot, a lot. And one day when I was out walking, it came to me, oh. And so the next time I spoke with him, I asked him, I said, why did you build a fence? Right? I thought back to our first conversation. And I said, wasn't it to keep your grandkids safe? He relaxed them. And he was happy with the decision. And of course, what had happened was with the legal process, what was most important to him was completely ignored. It was not part of the language. It didn't fit within the legal issues, so it was dropped. So the issue that was most important to him, that's not what the court decided. So of course he was angry. But once he remembered, oh yeah, I built it to keep the grandkids safe and they're giving me back most of my money and all is well. So that experience really shifted things for me in terms of decision making. But I'm kind of a slow learner. So after we separated, I went back to law school to get my master's because it was something I'd always wanted to do. And I had a job researching. I got a job for a couple profs on, settlement on business and commercial disputes, alternative dispute resolution. And I came across this statistic that said 90% of business and commercial disputes are settled without any involvement from lawyers. And I remember thinking, don't they like us? I still identify as a lawyer. Don't they like us? Oh, how could this be? I get it now. And what was interesting though is with that job, I learned that when people negotiate and come to a resolution, even if it is not strictly speaking legally binding, they are much more likely to do it because they put the effort into negotiating it and they have agreed to it and it is their integrity on the line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
also like I think so if 90% of business and commercial disputes can settle without lawyers, there's a lot more family law disputes, divorce cases that can settle without lawyers.
That would be wonderful if they could, like I had said before, we wait to bring on the attorney until after everything's all organized. We don't have to pay the attorney to do that. But in the case with my clients, their 2BX is not turning in their financials. They are not doing anything they're court ordered to do. And so we have to have somebody that is able to push and get things done. We just need to, like I said, I work with this wonderful lawyer in Colorado that
Mm-hmm.
he he doesn't think about how much it's costing the client. He just does a hell of a job at taking care of his client. He just does it. And it can be quite the cost to the client. So we have to pull the reins back on him because he loves his work so much. And it would be a plus to have somebody like that if you needed them.
Well, and so there's a couple different ways to bring something to a conclusion when you have somebody who's really controlling. And the first way is before lawyers, you go to a mediator like you or like me. Because what happens, they want to be liked. They want to be a good guy or this woman who's just a great human being. And so if you get them soon enough, they're going to be more interested, there's fewer outside influences. I know one couple I worked with, it was actually quite lovely that he had a coworker who was spending, I think, who had spent $100,000 on a divorce and it wasn't yet settled. So my client was like, look at me, I'm going to win. I can, he didn't say that. No, that was part of his rationale for settlement. And he actually agreed to pay more spousal support and for a longer time than when he originally talked to me. Okay. And we focused, on life for the kids, and the kids were adults. And it was a beautiful thing. The other way to bring it to a close is with an attorney, like you mentioned, because as soon as the controller feels a little bit humiliated, they dig in and they will use the court process to perpetuate the abuse. So you really, really need somebody strong. And I'm thinking, we represent, like a few years ago, I got a message on Facebook, hey, Kim, do you remember me? And it's this former client when I was a junior on her file with a husband who was not paying child support, was not paying spousal support, owed in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we brought an application for contempt. So contempt is if you do not follow a court order, if you're found in contempt, you can go to jail. So it's a 2-day hearing. And the second day after lunch, there's an RCMP officer in the back of the courtroom. Oh. And the judge called a recess. And the RCMP officer, police officer, goes up to this gentleman and says, I want your shoelaces, your wallet, and your belt. And so this woman, when she said, do you remember me, Kim? I'm like, well, I only ever had one RCMP officer in the back of the courtroom asking a fellow for his belt, right? So yes, I remember you. And she thanked me because that was the moment when her ex decided, I better start paying or I'm going to jail.
Right, right.
And
That,
and but the other thing is, if you don't have millions of dollars to fight, it's really about, like, one thing I help my clients with. My background is judo, right, which is maximum efficiency with minimum effort. So if I'm coaching somebody, it's all about, what do you really need? Like, what do you want? What does winning look like for you? And it doesn't have to match the what the lawyers tell you is for you've won. And what does it look like for him? So negotiation is very, very different because we're playing on what he wants so that he doesn't know that, so it's always right. Like you never stop. You never start negotiation with your bottom line because they're going to push you down more.
mm-hmm.
And and there might be something of his or hers that they really, really love and want to keep and that you don't care about. But can you make an argument why you want it? Right? So you can give up something and you're much more likely to get something that's important to you.
Give and take, give and take.
Right? Because in that abusive situation, you're thinking, if I'll just go along with this and it'll all be good. I'll just be reasonable. And there's some attorneys who go, okay, let's start with reasonable. Doesn't work.
Mm-mm.
But people also have to know how much they're willing to spend on the attorney and when to quit.
Right. Sometimes you have
Because
to
of
weigh that out.
right, because of sunk cost bias. They're going to keep spending and they might spend more than they're going to get in property. And that doesn't make sense.
True, true. So we're already coming to a close already, and you and I could probably go on for another hour at least. So all of your contact information will be at the bottom of the show, but can you tell people how to find you and how to find your course?
So my website is kimkorven.com, and the course is there. And the course takes you through like how to get on the same page so that you can actually communicate more effectively. It has a module like here's all the information you need to gather. Here's translating the legal terms into plain English. So you can actually have a conversation where the language doesn't have you hyperventilating. So you can make good decisions. There's a module on separation agreements with some templates. There's a module on filling in court forms. And so you don't live where I live? Well, that's okay. Here's how you find the court forms where you live. To apply for divorce, preferably together, that's the simplest, with the separation agreement attached. And then some more resources, like all the different types of professionals you could work with. Here's what you could expect to spend if you work with lawyers. Because even if, like, you do the course and it helps put you in a better place so you can work with a divorce coach and you understand the concepts, you resolve 3 of the 6 issues, you've saved a lot of money. And so the course is there. And there's also on my website a ritual for divorce, which helps people actually move through that. What are our best memories? And so they can make better decisions. But yes, that is best place to find me.
Okay. Awesome. So for our viewers, I'm a certified divorce coach, meaning that I'm trained in the complexities of divorce. I've also experienced abuse. I watched my father go through abuse. I witnessed my late husband go through abuse. So not only do I know it textbookly, I also know it physically. So you can find me or contact me through my email at coachtinalyn@gmail. That's CoachTinaLYNN@gmail.com. My website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. You can also find me on social media, Facebook under Tina Lynn Huggins, that's Huggins, LinkedIn under Tina Huggins, Instagram under Divorce Coach Tina Lynn, and TikTok under Divorce Tina. So one of the things I like here at the end, Kim, is to ask for you to give our viewers your last bit of advice.
The one thing that could save you so much money and stress and keep you safe is if you can be curious, not furious.
Love that.
So instead of going, no, I don't believe you, or that's wrong, say, oh, I haven't thought of it that way before. Tell me more.
I like that. Curious, not furious.
Be curious, not furious.
So in my advice here is that Kim is one of 2 retired lawyers that are in my back pocket. And I haven't known Kim long enough to be able to actually get to work with her yet. But the other retired attorney, I work with her quite frequently with my clients. I think having Kim as somebody that you can go to and ask questions, pay for her time and ask questions and get yourself clear about where you're headed, especially if you're doing this pro se, which is kind of what Kim is suggesting here. Having Kim in your back pocket, being able to ask questions is huge. So I want you to remember Kim's name and go to her website and find that information out, because being able to ask her and pay for time saves you money as opposed to just going to your lawyer and handing off the divorce to the lawyer. So one of the things that I like to cover here is that as we go, and you heard me talk earlier about my attempted suicide. Suicide is something that some of us get to, that suicidal ideation. And so if you are contemplating or feel like you're in that place right now, please call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. This is here in the US at 988 The Netherlands offers the same help at 113. And Kim, do you guys have a national suicide prevention hotline there in Canada?
I don't even know.
Okay, so that's something we'll have to look up.
I'm going to.
If you are in a situation that you need the police there now, here in the States, please call 911, and it's 999 in Europe, in the UK, and in the Netherlands, it's 112. So you want to get the police there, you want to press charges. Do not remove those charges. Those charges are your key out of the abuse. Oftentimes, when you drop those charges, the abuse that came before the charges were placed is much worse after the charges are dropped. This is your key out. It's a safe time. The domestic violence hotline is 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. And I ask that you please like this, comment on it, and share so that this can help others. So I really want to thank you for being here and talking with me today. Kim, this has been an awesome conversation.
Thank you. And I just looked up the suicide crisis line in Canada is 988. So
988.
I
need to make sure that I remember that so I can put it down in my notes. So, and actually it's the same, sorry, as I look back over my notes, it's the same exact one that we've got. So I'll make sure that I list that as also Canada's number.
It's really important one to have. So thank
Yes.
you for bringing that to my attention.
So very good. I just think it's important that we have those important numbers because in the middle of the night when we're not in a good place, we need to have somebody that we can talk to for that moment. And thank you again, Kim.
Thank you.